All right, Adam, we are closing out 2024 with you and I on the podcast. We're going to hit some current events because there's a lot of current events going on.
Fucking crazy year.
Crazy shit. And it's nuts how we're on December 2nd now, 2024.
Yep.
And dude, the news is just rolling like crazy. So we decided to hit a couple things. We're going to hit some politics. We're going to hit some health trends. Maybe if we have enough time, get into some ridiculous stuff that's happening on TikTok. But the reason that we want to come on here every once in a while and talk about these current things is because I think from our current perspective, we're able to provide some interesting perspective on the shit that's going on. So let's just jump right into it. Hot and heavy. Something happened last night on December 1st. President Joe Biden has pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. So you and I talked about this a little bit in the gym today. We're both in agreement that I'll just back up a little bit. If you guys don't know, Hunter was convicted of, I'm not going to get super specific here, but essentially Hunter was convicted of a tax evasion crime that he pleaded guilty to and a gun charge. I don't give a shit if Biden pardons him for those things. I really don't. Like, the libertarian in me is just like kind of whatever, but also like if you have the opportunity to pardon your son for those things, they're not a big a deal. Like some people even on the right think that those cases were kind of soft anyways. And, so I don't give a shit that he was pardoned for those. Mm-hmm. Where I have an issue is, and this is what people I think are really going to raise all their eyebrows about, he pardoned him for anything under the sun, essentially, over the last 10 freaking years. So I'm going to read it right from the pardon, okay? This is a full, and by the way, this is President Biden talking about his son, Hunter Biden. He gets a full and unconditional pardon for those offenses against the United States for which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through December 1st, 2024. He gave him a blanket pardon for anything that he did or might someday be charged with or might have even been a part of over those 10 years. And to me, that is very telling because we're not just talking about the tax thing. We're not talking about the gun thing that he was just convicted of.
Burisma. Oh,
yes.
Sorry. A little sick.
For anybody new to the game here, go look up or just open your eyes a little bit. Go look up Burisma and Hunter Biden, because around that exact time, January 1st, 2014, Hunter joined Burisma, which is essentially an energy company over in Ukraine. I'm not going to go super crazy deep into this. However, Hunter Biden had zero energy experience, had no finance experience, had no experience that was even closely relative to what they needed to be on the board of an energy company.
He's also a crackhead.
Like literally. But the crazy thing is where I'm like, okay, I see what Biden is doing here. He's essentially trying to like safeguard himself from prosecution, because that entire deal, I'm wrapping up a very long story that I've been following for 10 years in just a minute or two. Mm-hmm. That whole deal, the reason he did that is because the whole thing was installing Hunter Biden in Ukraine on this energy board. It was a pay for play for his daddy, who was the VP at the time. Mm-hmm. Obama was president and Biden was vice president, was basically in charge of what was going on in Ukraine. His son gets installed, making an absurd amount of millions of dollars a month over there for no reason, has no energy on that thing.
Also didn't pay taxes on any of that money.
And it kept spooling into countless stories of like Joe Biden firing a prosecutor that was looking at Burisma, which Hunter again was on the board of, and all these different things. There was this one dude who was not allowed to come to the U.S. Hunter made him kind of cool. And as soon as they had a meeting where they closed these deals, all of a sudden he's allowed to go to the U.S. So
then they carve off 10% for the big guy.
Exactly. So the big guy, and again, this is such a big story that has been going on literally for decades. It's impossible to try to condense it here on this podcast in just a couple minutes. Like, we need freaking slideshows and whiteboards and videos and all this stuff. But the point is that Joe Biden just pardoned his son from any and all federal crimes going back 10 years. Mm-hmm. which is very interesting because, again, if we were just talking about the very current gun and tax charge that he was convicted of, if you want to commute those sentences or pardon him, I don't care.
Don't give a fuck about the gun.
I don't give a
shit. Or the taxes.
Like,
really.
you shouldn't have said you would not pardon him. Like, so definitely that's not good. But at the end of the day, that's your son. I get you would do that.
Yeah.
But it's obvious that he is trying to cover up now for the last 10 years of all this pay-for-play bullshit, true corruption. And I don't think they're going to get away with it, honestly. I think, if anything, with Kash Patel coming in as the FBI director, that is just like, oh, well, why did you go to that specific date 10 years ago? Interesting. Maybe there's something we could look into, because this shit always backfires on them. And I know it's going to. I just don't know how.
We already know. The thing is, they don't even really have to look into that stuff. They already know who the big guy is, quote unquote. They already know the whole Burisma deal. They already know that all this money is going to Ukraine to launder it. Like, it's not difficult. No, it's not difficult to figure out, right? And here's the thing, right? I don't care about the pardon either. Like, the cool pardon, awesome. The tax thing, taxation is theft. Don't give a fuck about that. The gun thing, the Second Amendment is absolute. Don't give a fuck about that at all. Even the drug thing, even Hunter Biden being a drug addict and them finding cocaine in the White House, which was probably his, let's be honest, right? Even all that, like, if you're like a libertarian, you know, more libertarian minded like myself, and I think you are as well, like, don't give a fuck about any of that either. What I care about is them selling our government to somebody else, to a corporation overseas. Like, that's what I care about. And it's not just that circumstance either. It's not just that instance. It's again and again and again. We see way back in the day, 20 years ago, when the government got sold to fucking Halliburton, like I've talked about a bunch of times, gotten a bunch of shit for, and all of a sudden it's true now. And it's like, I knew this fucking 15 years ago. It's like, no, the reason why we went to all these wars, well, Dick Cheney is the fucking CEO or whatever of Halliburton, and now Halliburton's in charge of everything overseas. Like, come on.
It's insane. And this is essentially at the root cause of why we wanted Trump to come in with this team of people to essentially audit the government, audit all these different things, audit the IRS, audit all these agencies, a lot of them that are redundant, that don't need to be there, because, dude, our debt's like at $36 trillion right now.
The government's been audited 7 times in the last 20 years, and it's failed every single one of them.
Well, specifically, that one you might be talking about is the Pentagon.
Yeah.
The Pentagon started doing audits 7 years ago, has failed every single one. So since the Pentagon started doing audits, they have not passed a single one. 100% fail rate. And they think after a couple more, they're almost there.
Yeah.
But, dude,
but if I send you $600 on Venmo, I'm going to get audited by the IRS.
Know about that. Yeah.
And then did you see, I'm sure you saw this too. We're getting into this. I'm sure you saw this. People that work for the IRS, like the IRS as a whole, all the people that work for them, those people owe the IRS, I think it was like $500 million. So like the IRS itself doesn't do their taxes.
Insane.
So why the fuck would I do mine?
Yeah. No, it's insane. Yeah, and again, I think really at the root cause of what I'm hoping for over the next 4 years is to finally weed out all of the bullshit that's in the government. It is a tremendous amount.
It's going to take a lot.
We're going to talk a little bit today about specifically the USDA and food and a couple of things that they have been doing for decades. And a lot of these changes should have happened decades ago.
It should have never happened.
Well, if you think about it like this, I'll get specifically into USDA in a second, but a lot of things that the government initially does is wrapped in a nice package, like especially around like a world war. Like, oh, there's a food shortage. We need subsidies. The farmers need to get going. The people need to get fed. Like, we're trying to rebuild what's going on. And they'll do something. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute with the USDA, with the agriculture in the United States. That should have been over a couple of years after that. But now here we are 40 years later, still subsidizing corn and high fructose corn syrup. And this is the path that I went down looking into the Coca-Cola thing. But let me back up real quick. We'll talk about that in a second. The last couple of things here about the Biden thing that happened last night, the Joe Biden pardoning Hunter Biden. If you guys do not know how that prosecution has been going, because he's been under indictment and prosecution. Hunter has been for a while. So here's a couple points here in my notes.
I thought his laptop was fake, though.
Well, yeah, that's one of them. So essentially the entire time that he has been, quote, indicted and under prosecution has been a sham. So the prosecution let the statute of limitations run out on many of these charges. They just basically just had no reason other than to let the statute of limitations run out. That happened. Then he left his laptop at a repair shop, which is just insane to me. But again, this dude has a very long history of drug use. And on that laptop was all sorts of incriminating evidence of drug use, of all sorts of sexual stuff that could be used for blackmail. And sometimes people are like, well, who cares what he does sexually and all that? Like, yeah, that's not the point. The point is that he was the vice president's son. And he's in very compromising situations with hookers and drugs that can be used by a foreign adversary to make you do things, especially when your dad is the VP. Okay, so that's compromising. But then there was a lot of information in there that was tying him and his dad back to all the stuff I was talking about Burisma. Okay, that was all on the laptop. And you guys probably know, what was the laptop falsely labeled as forever? Russian disinformation. Essentially, the news, the FBI, everybody was like, this laptop can't get out, because that is going to essentially incriminate Joe Biden and Hunter and probably a ton of other people, and we're screwed. Because we've been doing, like you said, a lot of bullshit in Ukraine with money laundering and pay-for-play power with our politicians and all this kind of shit, and these oligarchs that are paying to get access back to the U.S. when they've been banned and all this shit. So anyways, the second thing was the laptop was falsely labeled as Russian information officially by the FBI and all that, but it's 100% true. They now admit it. Then, a couple months ago, they concocted a sweetheart plea deal where basically Biden was going to admit that he was guilty to these things. And the government was like, okay, if you admit to that, we will give you basically immunity from everything. And the judge overseeing it looked at the plea deal and went, what? And it's like, okay, state, the United States versus Hunter Biden, like, why? What are you talking about? Like, what is this? And it basically got put on hold. And it was a big fucking deal. And so while all that was going on, people started to ask, well, is Biden going to pardon him? And Biden, KGP, the press secretary, everybody over and over and over and over and over again said, as you can imagine, all the gaslighting that no, he is not going to be pardoned. There's no pardon on the table. That's not how we do it. We're a rule of law. We're a family of rules of law and all this bullshit. Sure. But basically now here it is, blanket pardon for anything and everything he was even remotely connected to for the past decade, which is insane. So that's crazy.
I want to read something real quick. This is from the House Judiciary Committee report on the laptop specifically. Even though the FBI authenticated the Hunter Biden laptop archive in late 2019, the Bureau met with tech platforms over 30 times beginning in early 2020 to pre-bunk allegations that the Biden family traded off Joe Biden's name to make a fortune from foreign business deals. And that's from the House Judiciary Committee report.
Yeah, this is all real. Like, this isn't, that's what's so crazy about this. People need to wrap your head around this. Like, this was real. He pleaded guilty to the tax charges. That laptop with all the evidence on it is real. Like, it's all out there. But anyways, this has all been swept under the rug. And I think this is a example of why they push so hard to keep that bigger power in power. The Kamala Waltz machine. We all know Kamala Harris wasn't going to be in charge of fucking anything.
No way.
It was all just going to be this bureaucratic machine that is there and designed to basically keep the power with the people that need to keep the power. Because when it swings the other direction, like it has now, Kash Patel has been named as FBI director, which is incredible. And if you guys don't know about Kash Patel, he has been one of my favorite guys for a long time. And a lot of people are like just now looking into him, like, who is Kash Patel? So I'll just read you a little bit about him. I have a big sheet here about him. But this guy, Kash Patel, who Trump just nominated to be the FBI director, served as the chief of staff to the DOD and was the deputy assistant to President Trump. Dude, everything. He has managed $2 trillion in assets, a $740 billion budget. But some of these things are more important, I think. He was the deputy director of national intelligence, where he oversaw all 17 intelligence agencies, including like the helped create the president's daily briefings and all that. He was the deputy assistant to the president on the National Security Council. He served as the National Security Advisor and Senior Counsel for the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He was a national security prosecutor at the DOJ starting under the Obama administration. And he also served as the DOJ liaison to the JSOC, Joint Special Operation Command, as well as when he began his career as a public defender, dozens, I don't even know, says scores of complex cases in federal and state courts, from murder to narco trafficking to complex financial crime. So the guy is more than qualified.
You know, it's funny too, the media, when the media picked up on this story, all they put was Trump loyalist Kash Patel. And it's like, you reading all that stuff off, I didn't even know half of that stuff either. I knew he was on the Intelligence Committee. I knew he had worked at DOJ and stuff like that, but I didn't know half of the other ones. All the media will push right now is that he's a Trump loyalist. And it's like, well, no, he was a fucking prosecutor for Obama, and like shut up. Yeah. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, just shut the fuck up, you know?
And it's like I mentioned a minute ago, like all this, think about just the past 10 years, 15 years, like when it was Obama and it was Trump and it was Biden, all these things that have been happening, Kash has been there working in intelligence or working in the DOJ, working like in there in the background of this stuff, but like in leadership roles in the background there. He's actually kind of like a private guy. He just got on X, I think yesterday. Like he doesn't even have social media until now.
Fuck yeah.
But dude, he was one of the investigators into the Russia thing. And when it was like not panning out, which has been completely debunked now, which 99.9% of the people understand, he was one of the guys that like knew everything about it. Mm-hmm. And as he was bringing it up, he's like, hey, here's some of our findings and this and that. And they basically, the FBI would turn around and investigated him. And he's like, what the fuck? He's like, so Kash getting in there is so great. And I mainly brought that up on two reasons. One, because I'm fired up. I like him personally and I trust him. And I know he's going to do a phenomenal job. He's brilliant. He's an incredibly smart dude. But also, I think a big reason that Biden just pardoned Hunter is because of him, is because Trump nominated Kash to be the FBI director. They know what's going to happen. Now, this is, again, why they were pushing so hard to keep Trump out, because they could just sweep everything under the rug, basically until the end of time. You know, when they control the FBI, they control the House and the Senate. Like, you can do a lot of stuff. And I think they knew that, like, what was about to happen was, more of the truth is coming out soon. I'm just going to go ahead and blanket pardon him for everything. Mm-hmm. So it's insane. But it just happened last night. So we'll have to see what actually happens with all of that. But I don't think anybody is cool with it. Like, you see a lot of people saying, oh, it's the fatherly thing to do. Joe Biden's protecting his son. Like, again, we agree. We don't give a shit about the tax and the gun charge, whatever. Yes, do that for your son. He was messed up. He screwed up. He admitted he was wrong. I can live with that. What I can't live with is you trying to cover up the corruption that he was a part of, that I know is spread deeper and wider than we realize, especially with Biden. Dude's been there for 50 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's insane.
If you believe that's actually Joe Biden.
Yeah, who knows who it really is. Yeah.
Remember when they brought out like fucking randomly a couple months ago, they brought out that really tall guy?
Dude.
That was supposed to be Joe Biden, and everyone's like, why is he 2 feet taller than like, we just forgot about that? Like,
dude, there's some goofy stuff. I mean, maybe we should do like a tinfoil hat day.
Bro, that'd be fun.
Let's do that.
That'd be fun. We're gonna do a tinfoil hat. We're gonna wear tinfoil hats too.
Oh yeah. For sure. All right, let's hit a couple other things real quick.
Tell Andy Frisella to come on then.
Yeah.
We'll tinfoil hat it.
Pay an ode to Frisella. So another thing that's out there that people have been going back and forth on either side of the aisle, both sides, are tariffs. They're calling them Trump tariffs. So essentially what the charge is from the people on the left is that Trump is going to put in tariffs on, let's just use two, for example, Mexico and Canada. Okay. And they're saying that if he puts a 25% tariff on those countries, we will still get the goods from those countries, but the cost will go up probably 25% to match the tariff, right?
Okay.
And so they're screaming at that they can't have prices go up and all this and that and stuff. But my main thing back to them is that, look, the idea or the threat of a tariff is a negotiating tactic, and it has already worked. So what do I mean by that? Well, Trump basically told the president of Mexico, they had a meeting, and he told her, he's like, look, what you guys are doing with the border is unacceptable. This is a mutual border. It's ours on one side, yours on the other side. And we are doing everything we can do to secure the border, but you apparently are not doing anything. There's a huge caravan of thousands of people currently coming up here right now. And we already know all the drugs and trafficking that goes across it. Like, dude, it's not just about illegal immigration. There are so many people that are killed and raped and trafficked into horrible lives over that border. It should be secure to keep people safe.
Yep.
Okay. So the tariff thing.
Yeah. If you guys are just tuning in and like haven't seen our previous episodes, go watch our previous episode with Cade Lamb.
Yeah. CADE, Cade Lamb.
And it's Sheriff Lamb's son here in Arizona. He knows more about the border than basically anybody.
Yeah.
And he'll tell you firsthand account, told us on the podcast, like what's actually going on. We went down there with him. Is crazy. Anyways, go ahead.
It was wild. We did. We spent a whole day and into the night on the southern border of Arizona and Mexico with Cade, and then came back and did a podcast with it a few weeks later. It's insane.
I built most of that wall.
Dude, yeah, that's cool. That's insane. But anyways, back to the tariff thing. So the thing that people are screaming about is, oh, tariffs are going to raise prices. If they get implemented, yeah, probably. But 25% on a $2 avocado doesn't equal $5. Okay, so you got to do the math, one. But this is already proven successful because Trump had a meeting with the president of Mexico, and he said, yes, we are going to do a tariff if you don't take control of your side of the border. Just like that, the caravan was stopped, and she said, okay, we're fucking back. We'll work on it. Same thing with Trudeau. Trudeau from Canada flew down. He told him some shit, and basically he uses the tariff as a, hey, you don't want this. I don't want this. Here's how you specifically can prevent it.
Yep.
And it's worked already. So when people are freaking out about tariffs, to me, it's incredibly premature because one, most people out there have no freaking clue how a tariff actually works and what the implications are when it comes to like your wallet, your money, and your dining room table. I have no idea. I'm not even saying I'm a pro on it, but I understand at least this level that we're talking about. It's a negotiation tactic, and it's already proven to be working, and Trump's not even in office yet.
Here's another point too. There are instances where tariffs make sense. China, for instance, we need tariffs on Chinese goods because there's nothing, like basically nothing is built and made here in the United States anymore. That's a problem, right? I'm going to use cars as an example. Okay. I asked my mom about this. My mom's in her 70s. I asked my mom about this. I've asked a couple other guys that are older than 50 this, right? And I remember, just because I used to watch old movies and all this stuff, right? I remember my mom told me very plainly, she was like 30, 40 years ago when there were tariffs on Chinese goods like cars and Japanese cars, like those were tariffed items. Like, so here in America, you bought an American car from Detroit and they were good cars. Yeah. We had really nice cars in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. As soon as those tariffs went away, as soon as those things went away, it went from Japanese shitbox to I'll only buy a Japanese car because they last longer. And it's like, no. They only last longer because we can't build anything here in America anymore because we can't match the price because we're not putting the tariff on the goods coming into our country. So people like Chevy and Ford and GM, they started outsourcing. Ford makes most of their cars in Mexico. Yeah. And during the Trump administration, that was coming back because Ford didn't want the tariffs on the vehicles. Right. So it's like, oh, now it has to be made here in America. And it's like, oh, well, we don't want the quality to fall. It's like that's a cultural thing, right? Well, when we had a government that was focused on tariffs and America first, right? I don't know why America first pisses people off so much. And I don't know why it's like racist or like bigotry or whatever to say America first.
It's not. It's not NPCs.
So if we started, and it's going to take longer than 4 years. Here's the other thing too. It's going to take longer than 4 years to clear up all this fucking mess. But if we do it the right way, 10, 20 years from now, and we have cars made in Detroit, I would love to see Detroit have a resurgence.
That'd be cool.
I've been looking up a lot, like pictures and stuff from Detroit back in, the 50s, 60s. It was beautiful. It was insane, the growth, right? Middle class families everywhere, but like all the stuff, right? That will have a resurgence if we focus on tariffs and if we focus on America first.
You nailed something. Like another easy way for a tariff to not matter, because it's just a negotiation tool, is like, for example, if Toyota, made in Japan, right? If Toyota doesn't want to deal with a tariff, they could just make another factory here in Texas or Detroit or wherever. They make it here. And then it's a financial decision. It's like, okay, the cars that we know that we were going to ship and sell to the United States anyways, instead of shipping and worrying about the tariff, if we just make it in Texas, just for example, okay, they do the math on, they're like, oh, that makes sense. And we can do stuff like that because we're the United States of America. We're the biggest dog on the block. And when we have a leader in charge now, like Trump, backed by all the people we know he's backed with now, like Musk and all these guys, it's like the whole world is like, they know we're number one. And so if we say, hey, you're either going to have to pay 25% more or whatever percent more on that thing, or you can come build it here.
Build
Here's
it here,
some land.
hire American workers.
They know that he's serious, They know it's not just hot air. They're like, oh no, that's because especially around the world, dude, Trump has a very strong reputation and name around the world. So does Musk, especially when it comes to business. So a lot of these business guys are like, they know it's serious. And so it's easy to get around this stuff. So anyways, I'm not scared of a tariff at all.
The only thing I wouldn't say apprehensive, but the only thing that needs to change also with the tariff is the culture. Because with tariffs and immigration, right? Because they're very closely related. So you get rid of all the illegal immigrants, right? And I had this argument the other day. They're like, well, who's going to pick your fucking fruit? And I'm like, well, that should be American. Like, there should be teenagers out there doing that. Should be like fucking teenagers out in the fields, working the fields and learning how to work. But that's a cultural thing. There are 0 teenagers I know right now that would go do that. And that's a cultural thing.
Sure.
So with the change in government, the culture has to change too, because if it doesn't, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
And that's what nobody wants to talk about, that piece. It's like, no. And that starts in the home. It starts with your family and yourself and, personal development and things like that. But that has to change too. Because if Toyota does build a factory in Detroit, who's going to work in there? Americans. Hopefully, right?
Well,
but what person do you know right now that is, in their 20s that's going to go work in a factory building cars? None of them. They want to be social media influencers. They want to be. This is why I like Mike Rowe so much. You know who Mike Rowe is?
Oh yeah, for sure. Dirty Jobs.
He was just on whose podcast was it? He was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about his foundation that he has, where he takes guys and he teaches them how to not go to college and how to go vocations and stuff like that. And he goes, it's so amazing. I'm in this room with a couple hundred vocational guys. And he's like, these are all guys that have gone through my program. None of them have college degrees. All of them make over $1 million a year. None of them have any debt. All of them have families. And I'm like, that makes sense. It's like, but the culture in the United States has to shift. And I feel it in the air.
Yeah.
Like the shift is happening, right? I feel it in the air, but we got to just keep pushing through it. We have to push through all the bullshit we're going to get over the next couple of years, because there's going to be a lot.
Oh, for sure.
And we just have to keep pushing the cultural piece.
There is a massive shift in culture. And that's another actually topic I wanted to hit on when it comes to health, because there's a massive culture shift that needs to happen across the board. So many people got so wrapped up in things that do not matter, like pronouns in your bio and catering, how you talk about 0.01% of the population that, is having some sort of gender issue. And it's just like, how in the world that ever became front facing? It is going away, and it needs to go away. But let's talk about another government thing here that is essentially affecting all of our health. So you might have seen recently that with RFK, and they're talking about going through, again, I think the most important thing that he is going to do in all these agencies is weed out the corruption, the pay to play from the big agriculture, the big pharma, and all these different things that are essentially influencing the health of everybody. But there's been this thing going around where it's like, hey, should RFK force Coke to stop using high fructose corn syrup and use cane sugar instead? And my answer is absolutely not. I do not want the government to get the precedent now where they can go into a private company and start altering their recipe. We don't want that at all. But when I started to think about that, it's like, okay, let me dive into this a little bit deeper. So a couple points I want to hit about this.
This is wild.
This is wild. A couple points as I started to look up, okay, well, let me look up corn syrup. Let me look up sugar. Let me look up these kind of things, okay? What's nuts about that is essentially, I didn't know this, okay? The USDA is in charge of doing a couple things. One is promoting United States agriculture, like basically getting our farmers, you know, get the word out, like get their product out. Like United States needs to be able to produce its own food and sell it. That's one thing they do. They also advise Americans, us as citizens, on what to eat, which included the now completely upside down debunked food pyramid that had carbs being ranked higher than protein, which we know is 100% proven to be wrong. If you're trying to lose weight or put on muscle or just stay healthy, you need to prioritize protein. Okay, reduce carbs. That's not what the food pyramid used to say, and that came from the USDA. So I was like, okay. So essentially what happened during and after World War II, we needed to feed people. So the United States USDA started to essentially subsidize corn production. And what happened there is in the 1970s, there was an overproduction of corn. There was too much corn being produced because they had been subsidizing it and getting the farmers to grow corn. It's easy, it's fast, it's all this. But we don't need all that corn anymore. And we know it's low grade. It's not good. So what do? They basically came up with high fructose corn syrup, which falls under the subsidy apparently. And so now
corn product.
Yeah. So that's why high fructose corn syrup is used in everything. So getting back to the Coca-Cola thing, should the government say, hey, Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all these different brands, you can't use that anymore. You have to use cane sugar? No, I do not want the government to be able to come in and do that, because if we set that precedent, who knows what the next thing is. Maybe we get an ultra stupid fucking USDA at some point and they say that eggs are bad, kill all the chickens, and who knows. That's a very extreme example, but I think you get my point. So it's like, okay, well, what do we need to do? Well, for one, I listened to a little bit of RFK and a couple other guys about this. We need to stop the subsidies on corn. We don't need to be producing corn like it's the end of World War II and we have a bunch of people that are willing to eat anything under the sun to keep their bellies full. We don't need that. So stop the freaking subsidies. And this can go across the board, but especially when it comes to this case, corn. We don't need to subsidize corn or corn syrup anymore. It's crazy because the government has known that like we don't have this food shortage anymore. We know that we've had an overproduction of corn for a long time, but the government is so slow to act and is so slow to implement change, especially when there's big money tied into
bureaucracy,
big agriculture. Someone goes, what's that mean? Well, think about all the food production. That's agriculture, big ag. There's a lot of lobby money that goes into the government to keep them subsidized, to keep them in favorable terms, so they don't get overregulated or overtaxed or messed with. Essentially, this is a decades overdue change that needs to happen. And back to what you just said, that's an easy thing to do once you get the information out, like real information out, that like, no, corn and carbs are not what you should be eating. High fructose corn syrup is a problem. Real cane sugar is best. Honey is better. Honey is best. Like all this basic stuff that we talk about in our coaching program. But we have to get to a culture change. People have to understand that and start to make the decision. So instead of the government forcing Coca-Cola to change their recipe, what I want is the real information to come out about the ingredients and have the public go, oh, well, it tastes just as good with that, and it's healthier and better. And the government's going to save, I don't even know, billions of dollars by not subsidizing something we don't even really need to eat anymore. That has been happening across the board in all agencies of the government, the military, the agriculture, the pharma, the infrastructure. Everything is completely out of control, over-bloated with regulation, with money that shouldn't be there, with these laws that are on the books that should have been taken off the books a long time ago. So that's my very long answer that no, we should not tell Coca-Cola what they need to do with their recipe. However, we don't need to be subsidizing the bullshit that they're putting in their drinks, because they will change. They will see that sugar is potentially cheaper than corn syrup. They're going to make a decision. Oh, and the public culture is shifting. People would rather have our Coca-Cola product a little bit healthier. They will make the right decision. That's capitalism.
The interesting thing too is that if we got rid of the subsidy, and there have been 3 big subsidies in corn since the 1930s. The big one in the 1930s was FDR's New Deal. It was to try to get out of the depression. He did a lot of stupid shit to try to get out of the depression, like taking everybody's gold and fucking. There was a lot of bad stuff happened there. Subsidies in corn, 1930s. 1970s, there was another one. 1996 to 2014, there's been a push, more subsidies. So since 1995, there's been $116 billion in subsidies for corn. There are 94 million acres of corn in the United States. We are the largest producer, consumer, and exporter of corn.
I'm all about exporting it, like grow it and export it, but like we don't need to be. Why are we subsidizing that?
It doesn't need to be subsidized. Here's my other point, right? We get rid of the subsidy completely, right? Mm-hmm. Farmers can grow whatever they want. Now, corn destroys the soil. The soil too. Corn absolutely destroys the soil. So you can only grow corn on corn soil. Like it fucking destroys it. So we get rid of the corn subsidy. We get rid of a bunch of those acres of corn. We start growing things that, that matter, right? That we can use here, real wheat, things like that, right? Sugar is cheaper than corn. It's cheaper than high fructose corn syrup. So Coca-Cola would just automatically go back to using something like sugar.
They do that in their Mexican version anyway.
Or maybe they would go to they're like, hey, listen, we're gonna use allulose now, right? Yeah. Because allulose, a couple of interesting things. Allulose has a very similar taste as sugar, so that's good. It doesn't taste like aspartame or fucking Splenda or all these other things, or stevia. Stevia is terrible. So allulose. Oh, it tastes almost just like sugar. It's really cheap and easy to produce. And, it normalizes your blood sugar. Oh, crazy. We could just use that if we got rid of the subsidy. But because that subsidy is there, and imagine how many other things are like that here in the United States because of the layers of bureaucracy, right? Mm-hmm. Why do you guys think, and why do you think, anybody listening, and Justin, why do you think the tax code is so long? Isn't it like 7,000 pages? Or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of reasons. One is because they never remove any code from it.
Exactly. It's because they layer bureaucracy on bureaucracy on bureaucracy. And though there's layers of nonsense and there's an entire industry like developed. That's why it's going to be so hard to get rid of like the IRS and stuff like that. I'm all for it. Like cut the whole thing. Bye. Right? I'm all for it. But like, think about this. If you get rid of, and you just did a flat tax for everybody, that industry is going to go away. TurboTax, fucking, what are the other ones? The tax CPAs, like all of those people are now obsolete because there's no giant, stupid bullshit tax code to go through. There's no crazy thing it should just be, everything's digital now. It should just be, hey, you made $100,000 this year. Cool. 10% flat tax. Mm-hmm. Dope.
Yeah.
Easy. Everybody.
And one of my favorite like videos I saw on Instagram, I think, about this was a guy. He was like talking to himself, right? So like on one hand, he's the IRS, and the other hand, it's him as a business owner. And basically, he was just like, the IRS is like, hey, your taxes are due. He's like, okay, cool. How much? And he goes, I don't know. And he goes, what do you mean you don't know? And he's like, that's for you to tell us. And he's like, oh, okay, then I'll just give you this. He's like, but you better not get it wrong. And he's like, what? And the IRS says basically, yeah, you better not get it wrong. You better give us the right amount of money or we're going to throw you in jail.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, well then tell me how much. And he goes, no, You have to figure it out. And he's like, what?
It's absurd.
But in a nutshell, that's what happens. It's like, we're not going to tell you what you owe. You have to figure out what you owe. And usually you have to pay attorneys and CPAs and all these different people to do it for you. And then when you submit that, if you get it wrong, you're in trouble.
Dude,
it's like, wait a minute. How about you do the work and tell me what I owe, and then I'll just pay you?
It's so absurd.
You're going to have to do the work to, dude, it's so insane.
It's so absurd because they know exactly how much money you made. So there should be, you could log on to the website and it should tell you, even when I owed taxes, right? Mm-hmm. There was nowhere in the IRS, on the IRS website that you could go to that said you owe this much.
Oh, no.
You get a letter in the mail that says we think you owe this much from this year to this year. Cool. Where do I pay it? We don't know that either, but you have to figure it out or you go to jail. And it's like, well, who do I send the check to?
Yeah.
And they're like, we don't know. We're just going to dock your pay now. And it's like, well, hold on a second. If you can dock my pay already anyways, like, dude, it's so absurd.
Yeah.
It's the most absurd fucking system like ever.
It is insane. All right, let's hit another topic.
Yeah.
So let's move over to Australia.
Oh, God.
There is a social media ban for kids under 16 now, apparently, and they are calling it a global first in child protection online. Anytime that you see something that is wrapped up in for the greater good or protection or something like that, you need to raise your eyebrows, because I see that. I don't look at that as a child protection online. I look at that as the government telling my kids what they can do, trying to play mommy and daddy instead of me and mama playing mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
And I am not for that at all, because if we let them do that, then they can bump it to 17. They can bump it to 18. They can start to say, okay, well, certain kids at 15 could have this social platform or that platform, or they could have access to this thing or that thing. It's control.
Social credit.
Yeah, it's control wrapped up as a nice thing, like online protection. So to me, that's a hell no. The parents need to do a better job. Culture needs to do a better job at showing kids what the real, risk and rewards are of social media. Yep. But we don't need nanny state grandma over here, the United States or Australia, the government, telling my kid what she's allowed to do at 15. Are you kidding me?
Yep. George Orwell, 1984. A society will give up all of its freedoms under the guise of protection.
Yeah.
Like every bit of freedom that we used to have that we don't have anymore was taken under the guise of protection. If you've never read the Patriot Act, and it's long, it's really long. If you've never read the whole thing, please go and read it. Like if you're listening right now and you don't know what the Patriot Act is because you're like not old enough to remember 2001 and like how cool life was before 2001, like go read the Patriot Act and understand what you lost, what freedoms you will never get back, because you'll never get freedoms back.
No.
Once they're gone forever. Because of that bureaucratic bullshit system that we talked about. I'm not a fan of any ban of I'm not a fan of ban.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. If you want to if you want to protect children online, you, the parent, me, the parent, do better.
Yeah.
Like that's it. It's a cultural thing.
That's it.
It is 100% a cultural thing. You do not tell my kids if they're allowed to have social media. I'll tell my kids if they can have social media.
Yeah. It's just like the Coca-Cola thing. No, I don't want the government telling Coca-Cola to change their recipe. Mm-hmm. No, I don't want the government telling my kids that they can't go on social media. Like, I don't want you to tell me or my family anything. Like nothing. You keep us safe. Make sure that we have a fair opportunity to earn as much as we want in life, and fuck off. Like, we shouldn't be talking about the government to the extent that we do with all these things. It's involved and intertwined in way too many things. Yep. All of these things that it's trying to do in the name of security or protection or the greater good are all wrapped in them getting more power. Because you're right, it'll never be given back. Same with money. Yep. Like Cash Patel said this the other day, and I've seen this and you've seen this in various industries that are funded by the government. Like I used to be in aerospace, right? At the end of the year sometimes, like the managers would come out and be like, hey, we need to spend X amount of money or we're going to lose it. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? They're like, well, like we were given X amount of money. There's 500 grand or 5 million, whatever it is left over. We didn't spend this year. Yep. Well, you might think if you're like a logical person, that money would go back to the government, back to the Senate, say, cool, thanks. Start to like go back in our piggy bank to fund our industry or something. No. basically it's either
Pay off
you
our
use
debt.
it or you lose it. And so what they do is they go spend it on giving people promotions, hiring people for positions they don't need, or here's the craziest one, dude. They will make new billets, which means that if there's 5 of us engineers in a room, they will make 3 more billets to make a total of 8 engineers. Those get funded with the salary assigned to those. They don't even have to fill the seat. A lot of those, and there's thousands of them in the federal government, are sitting there basically under some sort of thing of like, we're waiting to fill it. Someone's interviewing for it. We're training someone to take it over. We're merging, like whatever. But they sit there and they keep getting this money, and then they spend it on stuff so they don't lose it. Like again, more billets or parties or promotions or vehicles or upgraded computers or furniture that don't need it. Like this happened a lot at Lockheed sometimes because we were on Air Force bases. All of a sudden, we get all new computers and new desks and new chairs, and it's like neat, like cool, thank you. But it's also like, well, the stuff we had didn't really, it was fine. It was working. We were crushing it, but they had to spend it on something.
Dude, that's every layer of government too. And in anything, right? So I saw this in a different thing. When the first time I saw it, I noticed that every couple of years, I think it was like 2 or 3 years, every 2 or 3 years, the gym on base when I was in the Marine Corps got new equipment. And it was because MWR, Marine Welfare, whatever the fuck it was called, right? MWR, that the program that was the government funded program that was, over the gym and this, the park and whatever, all that stuff. They would get money every year and they had to spend it. And they had to overspend so they could get more next year.
Oh yeah, I know.
So they would buy new equipment for the gym, even though none of it was, and they would throw that equipment into, I can't remember what the thing was called, but it was like, it just goes into like this lot and fucking rusts.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't remember what that fucking place was called, but they just take all this brand new equipment that's been used for like a year and a half. Yep. They buy new equipment. And think about that, like the layers that you're talking about, right? So like everywhere from the gym to fucking billets in aerospace to and it's like all these programs work like that because like if you're good with your money, you won't get as much next year. And that's scary to these people. Like a financial advisor would say that's really bad. Like you have really terrible spending habits if you need more money next year.
Well, when mommy with the purse doesn't cut you off and keeps giving it to you and is completely reckless with racking up trillions of dollars in debt, being the government.
Oh, because they have a printer?
Then you just keep doing it. But this is the culture. This is the problem. And it is through every single little vein of government, all of it. And this is why we need DOGE to come in, Department of Government Efficiency. That alone, I think, is worth going through all the changes in the election and all the crap that's going to come because, I mean, that's going to solve so much of it.
It's all because in 1913, we sold our money to a private entity called the Federal Reserve. And now we buy our money. The Federal Reserve prints our money. For every dollar that's printed, I can't remember the exact percentage, but we pay a percentage on top of that for every dollar that's printed to the Federal Reserve. So a lot of our debt that you see, if you look at debtclock.com or whatever, that $37 trillion in debt, a lot of that we owe to the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
And that is a private bank. I want to emphasize my words right now because so many people think that the Federal Reserve is part of our government because they have a .gov website. The Federal Reserve is a private bank.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's insane. So,
and my brake lines are going to get cut now because I said that.
Let's
move on to something else.
Not to abruptly go to something else, but let's abruptly go to something else. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to air, so we don't need to talk about the holidays per se, but I want to talk about the easiest way, I think, to start to master your own health, and it's by mastering the basics. So what do I mean by that? Like right now, both of us are on a pretty advanced protocol with our partners at Elevation Health. We have peptides and supplements and fitness and nutrition and routines and all this stuff. I'm actually glad that Thanksgiving is over because I was dying to get up at 6 a.m. today and get back to my normal routine. But for everybody listening, if you're like, man, I do want to take my health to the next level, this is not a pitch, okay? So keep listening. This is free advice that anybody and everybody needs. It's mastering the basics. So the basics are as follows. Exercise. I'll go back and talk about all these. Exercise, eat clean, hydrate, sunlight, and sleep. Those 5 things, okay? So let's just cover them really quickly, and then feel free to chime in whatever you want. But working out does not need to be going to the gym and hammering yourself every single day and trying to get PRs. A lot of you listening probably just need to walk, need to hike, need to move your body, do some occasional cardio, lift some weights, or like even just freaking foam roll, stretch, do some yoga. We need to use our bodies. And especially as we get older, we need lean muscle on, not to look amazing. That is what keeps disease away. Okay. We need to move our body. So working out is the number 1 thing. Number 2 is eating clean. This is super easy. You already know what you're not supposed to eat, but you're eating it anyway. Stop eating the bullshit. Get educated. You can come into a coaching group like Earn It All, or anyone's out there. I don't even care. We got a guest, Cody, coming on here in a minute. It has a great freaking fitness coaching group. Get educated. Understand what kind of produce you should be eating. And here's the easiest thing. Even without any sort of coaching group, if you eat something and your body has an adverse reaction to it, don't eat that anymore. If it makes you feel like crap, if it makes you gassy, if it hurts your stomach, if it makes you lethargic, if you think it's making you fat, whatever it is, if you eat something and you have some sort of reaction, don't eat it anymore. Like, let's use an extreme example. If you eat something and you break out in hives and you're allergic to it, like if you're allergic to shellfish, you're not going to eat that shellfish anymore. But if you're slamming dairy or sodas or whatever that you in your particular body might have a negative reaction to, just stop eating it. That alone, by just moving your body a little bit and stopping to eat stuff that is messing with you, is huge. Okay. Next thing is hydrate. And I don't mean with beer. Okay. Hydrate with water. Easiest thing to do here is a gallon a day. And we can get into how many ounces per pound of body weight if you want, but just drink more freaking water. Just drink water.
Here's the point, right? Because each one of these things that you say master the basics, right? So when you say exercise, somebody who asks immediately, if you immediately go to what kind of exercise, you're making an excuse. Move your fucking body, right? When we say hydrate, well, what kind of water is best? Right. Fucking start drinking more water first. Yeah. Like master the doing it first. Yeah. Right. That's why we say these basics are habits. Yes. Exercising is a habit.
We're not talking about best at the moment. We're talking about mastering the basics.
Yep. Exercising is a habit. Hydrating is a habit. Getting good sleep is a habit. Getting sunlight is a habit. These need to be habits no matter what. And somebody said it the other day. I can't remember who said it, but they're like, my favorite workouts are shitty workouts. It was because you know what? I still made it. I still did it. Yeah. So even if I do 50 push-ups and 100 air squats, I still fucking got my workout in a day. Check the box, right? Yeah. That's mastering the basics. Totally. Mastering the basics doesn't mean I'm on this 12-week program that's great, right? But if you can't move your body every day first, then the 12-week program is probably not going to work because you're not going to do the habit. Yeah. If you're not already drinking plenty of water, right? A gallon. That's really easy. Some people need more, some people need less, whatever. If you're not already drinking enough water like that, then when I tell you, hey, make sure that you use reverse osmosis water and make sure that you put some salt in it. It's overwhelming. Yeah. It's like, no, just drink water first. You don't need to worry about getting the latest and greatest fucking Gary Brecka hydrogen water bottle, which, whatever. You don't need to worry about that yet. Drink more water first. Yeah. It's a process of building the habit first. And I love that we're talking about the basics right now because of that.
And by the way, this is not just for beginners. A lot of people listening to this go to the gym already and they're already trained. They're already working on themselves. I'm talking to you guys. I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to Adam. I'm talking to AD. Mastering the basics is something that everybody needs to do. Because I did a thing. I just kind of came up with it one day. I was like, I'm going to do a perfect week challenge. We were on one of our Tuesday night coaching calls and I challenged everybody on the call to do it with me. And I was like, what does that mean? Well, that means with my advanced protocol that I have or with your beginner protocol, it doesn't matter. Do exactly what you're supposed to do and nothing else without skipping or without swapping anything out for 1 week. It was much more difficult than I realized because I'll give you a couple examples from mine. I have my vitamins from morning, afternoon, and evening all broken down into a pill box. So I don't have to think about it, right? I put it together once a week. Yep. And I also have some peptides I take in the morning and I take in the evening. And then I have my post-workout shake. I have a certain amount of food that I eat. I have my gallon of water per day. I have my basics, right? I noticed as I was going through that perfect week challenge that I had this tendency to if I was maybe already feeling, I have a hard time sleeping. So if I was already like almost asleep kind of on the couch, I do sleep on the couch sometimes because my back, I have a compressed disc. That's a side note. It does help with my back a lot. But I noticed that if I was almost out, I'd be like, you can skip the magnesium. It's in the kitchen. Like, just go to sleep.
I'm already going to sleep.
Yeah,
good.
I'm already going to sleep good and all that. And then there was even one time, same thing, was still kind of passing out, feeling great, like, oh, finally, I'm going to get some good sleep. But I hadn't taken my nighttime peptides yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, so I didn't miss that and went and got it. But then I'm on TRT too. So every 4 days I take a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, if I miss the shot, I don't care. I'll just push it a day on my calendar. But during that perfect week, I was like, no, I'm committed to doing this perfectly. And it's crazy how many times that little thing snuck up in the back of my head. Like, you know what you're doing. You've been training for a long time. You're on a really advanced protocol. You know, if you push the TRT shot a day, it won't matter. You know, missing magnesium one night won't matter. And it'll be okay. You can get around that and overcome it. And I'm like, damn. So everybody listening, this is for you, mastering these basics, no matter how long you've been training, how dialed in you are, especially if you're a coach or you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader, you're kicking ass, you're someone that somebody looks up to get this kind of information from. I'm talking to you guys. You guys need to master the basics. So it's exercise, eat better, hydrate, sun, and sleep. Sun, I'll tell you real quick about the sun. You brought this to me 2 years ago. 10 to 20 minutes in the morning in your eyes and on your skin. So I go out every morning, shirt off, and I'm not staring at the sun like a freaking dumbass, but I'm getting the sun and getting the sun in my eyes, which is telling my body, wake up. I'm getting that vitamin D in, which is very hard to absorb through pills or drops and all that. I'm getting all that in. And it just feels great to be out there and like feel it on your body, on your skin, right? We're talking about getting our body healthy. And the reason I said that it tells your body to wake up, why that's important is because the last thing on the list is sleep. Most people out there are not getting enough sleep. You know, especially if you're in this business world where like I'll sleep when I'm dead and grind culture and all this stuff and work longer, work harder, you know, drink more caffeine, all that. It's like, dude, that is scientifically not setting you up to be healthier. So some of you that are wondering like, man, how come I just can't lose the weight? Or how come I can't just, you know, look the way I want to look? Like I'm doing good in business and all this and that. I go to the gym and everything. Well, it's like you're not giving your body the chance to rest, to build that muscle, to shed the fat, to clear your adenosine receptors in your head, which your caffeine latches onto. And the morning sun is where that starts. Better sleep starts in the morning when you wake up. So that's why we say to get that 10 to 20 minutes of sun in the morning, every day, ideally. And dude, and don't play freaking quarterback from the armchair here, okay? Someone's like, it's cloudy or it's not, you know, freaking sunny when I wake up. Get the freaking sun in somehow, okay? I'm not even going to break down all the different ways. You're an adult. You can go outside and find the freaking sun, okay? Get it in as much as you can or as often as you can for 10 to 20 minutes. That is going to help you sleep better, which when you get into that deep sleep, that's where your hormone production comes from. That's where your real recovery comes from. That's where your brain clarity comes from. So many things come from it. Work out, eat clean, hydrate, sun, and sleep. Do those things, master those basics. And then we can talk about getting into super advanced protocols or what kind of water, what kind of food, what kind of exercise, like all that shit.
Sun timing. Yeah. Here's the thing. Anytime that I want to level up, anytime I get stagnant or I feel like something is, you know, I could level up, right? I go back to the basics. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go off program and protocol and all this stuff, right? And I'm going to go, nope, I'm going to fucking get good sleep tonight. I'm going to get my 3 times. I do 3 times out in the sun every day. Morning, midday. I try to get at least 10 minutes midday and at night, but that's my sun. That's different for me, right? Just get in the morning, but start the habit, right? My habit's a little bit different because of the way that I've, you know, designed my day, right? But so get better sleep, get sun, drink enough water and exercise. Right. And cool. When I do that for a couple of days, even, and it doesn't even take that long, it's a couple of days, the mental change that you get when you actually do what you said you were going to do, this is like a really cool byproduct of this. You start getting self-confidence. You start gaining self-efficacy. You start saying, wow, I do the things I say I'm going to do. And you know what? For the guys out there listening, for the younger guys out there listening, that's really attractive for a woman. When you do what you say you're going to do, when you have a routine that you don't break for anybody, You go, no, you know what?
Yeah.
This is what I do. And you don't break that routine for anybody because this is me showing up as my best self and this is how I do it.
Yeah.
Like that right there will set you on a path and trajectory to master, like self-mastery, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lifelong thing, which is really cool to me. I used to think like, fuck, like it's a lifelong thing. So who cares, right? It's like, oh, I'll never get there. It's like the cool part is doing it though.
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, and I love those basics are so important too, because once you master those basics, then it's fun. Like it's fun to master the basics. But then when you get into the like, you know, well, I'll take sun, for example, right? For Arizona this time of year, you're actually not getting any vitamin D until like 10 a.m. because the UVB ratio isn't high enough. The frequency of the sun or the wavelength of the rays of the sun aren't high enough for you to convert vitamin D in your skin until like 10 a.m. So then it gets really cool. Once you've mastered getting the sun in your eyes, on your face, and your skin, that's important for, you know, your circadian rhythm and stuff like that. It's like once you've mastered that and you do that every day, then it's like, oh shit, it's fucking noon right now. I'm going to go take my shirt off outside.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get 10 minutes real quick because I know in 10 minutes, I'm going to get roughly 1,000 milligrams of vitamin D ish.
That's a good point. Once you have the basics down, then you can mess with your schedule a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you know what? I actually could take my shirt off and go outside right now. And it's like you said, it's at noon.
Yep.
But if you never mastered that basic thing, you would never even think about it.
Same
You would just
thing-
keep blasting work through lunch.
Same thing with water. Same thing with food.
Yeah.
Same thing with exercise. Once you master moving your body every day, now you can go, oh, cool. Okay. Now I'm going to do like a program, like a real program.
Yeah.
I'm still going to move my body every day, but I'm also going to do this thing.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to do in one of our programs, maybe. Right. Try fucking Operation Juggernaut if you dare. Right.
Yeah.
Like that program sucks. I built it for me to build a strongman body. Like that's how I built 312 pounds of stupid, strong 900-pound squat fucking juggernaut. That program's hard.
Yeah.
You have to be able to exercise every day first. Because I've had people try that program in our app, and they're like, "This is crazy." I'm like, yeah, like it's every day. There's no like, yes, there's rest, but it's like planned recovery, you know.
Sure.
And there's still stuff that you have to do on recovery days too.
Yeah.
So it's like master the basics first, though. I love that because too many people try to overcomplicate and like, well, Andrew Huberman said that I need to get 37 ounces of structured hydrogen fucking sunlight B12 at 7:12 a.m. or it's not going to work at all. And it's like, that's not what that means actually. And to be honest with you, most of the thing, Andrew's great. Most of the things he says come from singular studies. And most of them are not meta-analysis. And also most of them are on rats too. So,
yeah, I feel you. So, dude, I think a lot of people should do the Juggernaut program. And we do fitness differently than a lot of people where, you know, a lot of guys charge a couple $100 a month to be on the program and this and that. And we decided to go a completely different route and say, hey, we want to get as many people as fit, capable, confident, and happy as possible and healthy as possible. So you can join our program for less than $100 a month and get access to the Juggernaut program, a dozen other programs, our weekly live coaching calls, our badass community of, we call them elite earners. Anybody that wants to level up in life, we've put this together for you. Okay, so if you need help with your fitness, your mindset, your personal development, whatever it is, we cover all of that stuff, and your fitness is included in it for less than $100 a month. So just go to earnitall.com, check it out. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any questions. And if you got anything out of this podcast or any of our other podcasts, please do the thing, subscribe, share it with somebody, comment, whatever you can. We really appreciate it. Of course, we're not charging for it, but we really like to get your feedback and at least see you subscribe. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you in 2025.
bro, we didn't talk about navel pulling.
See you in 2025.